Welcome back to the Gold Newsletter YouTube channel. Welcome back to New Orleans. I'm joined by Craig Parry. He's the president and CEO over at Vizsla Copper. Greg, it's good to see you. Thanks for coming to New Orleans.
G'day, Kai. Great to see you. Exec chair, actually. But, exec
sorry
chair,
about that.
But that might change soon.
Potato.
Exactly. I'm going all in on this one. I love copper, I love British Columbia, and I love the projects we've got there at Woodjam. So this is the day job.
The day job? Fantastic. I was going to ask you for a quick introduction, 30, 60-second overview of Vizsla Copper before we dive into some of the specifics.
Sure.
Do you want to start us off there?
Vizsla Copper, spin out of Vizsla Silver. We spun it out about 2 years ago. We actually started Vizsla Silver as a copper company originally. It was called Vizsla Resources. We've kicked the tyres on over 400 copper projects around the world. During that process, we stumbled across the Panuco project in Mexico. Of course, you know, we've proven up 220 million ounces of silver there, growing all the time. And Vizsla Silver, I think, you know, what we're seeing there at the moment, we've got 6 rigs turning at the moment. I think it's one of the world's great silver districts and will become a major silver producer over the next 5 to 10 years. We spun Vizsla Copper out. We've known about the Woodjam property in British Columbia for a long time. It's a bit of a legendary type of property. We acquired that in a merger with Consolidated Woodjam about a year ago, with a little under a year ago, 10 months ago, for 11 million in cash. And this is a classic deal, the type of deal I love to do, whereby for very, not much money at all, we've secured a major resource base that protects the downside and then has vast exploration upside. So there's already 1 million ounces of gold there, just under 2 billion pounds of silver at a head grade of about 0.4% copper equivalent. But within that, there's some very high grade zones that we're working on understanding and pulling out at the moment. And then a huge amount of exploration upside, tremendous looking suite of properties. We've got over 80,000 hectares. There's been 6 porphyry centres discovered on the property. So it's a very big property with a huge amount of upside.
Fantastic. To get everybody on the same level, let's talk cap structure real quick as well. Run us through that. What are some of the highlights?
We've got about 100 million shares out. There's a few warrants there and a few options, so about 120 million fully diluted. We're cheap today. I think we're trading at about 11 cents a share, Kai. So we've come back dramatically since our last financing, which was at 24 cents back in March. We raised $6 million. Well supported in the market, interestingly enough, because we did an in-specie distribution of that stock to Vizsla Silver shareholders. We have a sort of, not a bad institutional share register already, and that includes Franklin Templeton and Steve Land there. Goldfields are a shareholder. I've put in over $1 million myself in the past 2 years into the company, so a bit over $1 million actually, but so, insiders own a very good chunk of the company as well.
How much cash is left from what you've raised?
We've got about $2 million in the bank today. Half of that's flow through. We've got to spend that by the end of next year. We just completed an 8,000 metre, 18-hole drill campaign on the property, waiting for all of the assays to come back. We've had a few come out recently. We put out a drill hole a month ago, 66 metres at 0.9% copper equivalent, so getting some good results. In a market like this, you've really got to question the merit of going out and raising finance right now at a very dilutive share price and completing another drill campaign in the winter. So we'll look at that and we'll reassess based on the results as we get these assays finally back. Certainly got a lot to go on with the MAG survey we did back in March. We put out the results of, I've been doing porphyry exploration for over 20 years now. Typically when you do a MAG survey over a suite of porphyry targets or a property, you might get a hand for 1 or 2 or 3, maybe if you're lucky 5 discrete MAG targets that you consider testing. Here we came up with 102 discrete MAG targets, including several prominent bullseye-shaped targets that, those bullseye-shaped MAG targets, they come from the destruction of magnetite within the core of the porphyry system. These are classic targets. So I'm excited to get out and test those, but we've got a bit of a challenge there because we've got 102 of them.
How do you prioritize?
That's a good question. So we've got soils, rock, geochemistry, we've got historical understanding, the geology, IP across the property. We've completed a ZTEM survey over part of the property. So you factor all of those in and go through and rank and prioritise on that basis.
Interesting. Okay, so lots of work to do, obviously.
Huge amount of work.
But I want to take a step back because one of the questions popped up when you said, well, you looked at 400 projects. Why'd you end up in BC?
So, firstly, we think there's an opportunity to build a large, diversified base metal producer within Canada in a good, stable jurisdiction where you can still get things permitted. So we like that. I think that BC gets a bit of a bad rap for its porphyry systems. People say, oh, they're too low grade. Well,
Too small, too low grade.
Too small, too low grade. That's not entirely true, because if you look at the core of some of these systems, New Afton, for example, there's about 60 million tonnes at 1.6% copper there. That's what we want. We want something like that. We think that they're there. We've had some, historically on our property, there have been some spectacular drill holes, 110 metres at 2.6 grams gold and 0.4% copper. So we know these systems carry grade. We think that there just hasn't been enough done on the geological understanding and understanding how you domain these high-grade zones. So we think there's an opportunity to do that. Everything there is close to the surface. Very importantly, you've got First Nations and government support, and there's fabulous infrastructure and very cheap power in British Columbia as well. So there's a lot to like about the place.
Going for it, yeah. Why copper though? As well, half a year ago, they said go all in copper.
Yep.
Right now, the recession sort of seems to be. How do you call it? It's it seems to be coming.
Yes.
People are starting to feel it, maybe.
Yeah.
Right. So, how about timing the cycles? Right. That's always a tough one, especially as a junior. You have $2 million in cash. At some point, you will have to raise money. It's inevitable. That's the name of the game.
100%.
How does that fit all together?
Yeah. So, look. In all honesty, I would have thought that we would be in a rip-roaring copper market by now, and not quite there, and trading pretty well, around $4 a pound. I guess we're back at about $3.60 today, but a long way off that recent low of $2.10. So it's going okay. I think that we'll see $20 or $30 a pound copper in the next cycle. Now that's 3 to 5 to 7 years away. So, and we take a very long-term view of these things. So we're not too worried about sort of month to month or annual fluctuations in the price. We're looking longer term than that. Right now, though, I think you're right. Global recession never going to be good for the copper price, but that theme of electrification of the planet isn't going away. It's coming, and more people are buying EVs. If I start thinking about buying an EV, which I have been, something, and I'm a massive car nut, I like the sound of them. We're past the tipping point, well past the tipping point. I'm a bit of a late mover. So look, I think we're going to see, the dynamics of the last. If you listen to Trafigura or Glencore, we're about to see a 30% increase in demand in copper by the back end of this decade. A similar change in demand drove when I started at Rio Tinto in 1999, the copper price was 72 cents a pound. A decade later, it was $4.60 a pound. So the price rose nearly 6 times in a market whereby you had a 30% change in supply-demand dynamics. Trafigura and Glencore and others are now saying this is the same change in demand that's coming. But nowadays, it's offset against, you need to juxtapose that against the supply side, and that's, being on this sort of issuer and exploration and development side of things, we are supply side tragics. And the supply side is deeply challenged. Their global head grades over that same time frame have dropped from, a bit over 1%. To now below 0.6%. You've seen a paucity of exploration, permitting and development work over the last 10 years. I just simply can't. And then, the challenges around building a mine anywhere in the world today are so much more than they were 10 years ago. So the supply response is going to be so muted that I think we're going to see extraordinary spikes in the price as things, as that demand profile picks up.
You mentioned in the beginning that you're jumping in now feet first into the new role, and you will be transitioning to CEO role here very shortly. Why?
Look, that's simply because I love copper. I love the business. I love our projects. I want to be more hands-on on this one. I've got a bit of a personal objective to try and build a mid-tier base metal producer in record time. You look at something like the best example, not a great example today, but First Quantum. What a fabulous story. Built out of Perth in Western Australia. Over the last 20 years, they've become one of the world's great mining companies. We struggle a little bit to see the projects to do that, but that's what we'd like to do. So and that gets back to I mentioned up the front there that we've kicked the tyres on over 400 copper projects in the last 4 years. It's another sort of pointer that the supply side's fundamentally challenged. There's not much out there worth buying. So I want to be all in, get my hands dirty, and go about building a serious producer.
Fantastic. Next news items we have to talk about. You're still waiting on some essays, so I'm assuming drill results will be the next bigger item.
Yes, drill results. We put out a news release today, I believe. We acquired some ground just north of Kodiak Copper's project. Good looking ground. The exploration targets there and the mag targets that came out of the surveys there, very compelling. So excited to look at that. That was today. More assays coming. Assays, for whatever reason, very, very slow at the moment out of labs in British Columbia. But we'd expect to have the bulk of the rest of the assays from the project over the next 6 weeks. That will all feed in. As I mentioned, there's a resource there of nearly 1 million ounces of gold and nearly 2 billion pounds of copper. I think that the next step is to really improve our understanding of the high-grade domains, pull those domains out, rebuild the resource model ourselves. The last resource model was done in 2013 by Goldfield, so a lot of that's out of date, and update the resource model. So that'll be big news next year, and then that goes into, all going well, another drill campaign in the not-too-distant future.
What are you planning to spend $1 million on flow-through on? Is that going towards that resource modelling? Can you apply to that?
I'd rather put it into, certainly. No worries about that. I'd love to put as much of that as possible into more drill holes. But obviously we'd need to raise more money mid next year to execute on that.
Name of the game. I don't think it's a big surprise to anybody, to be honest, right?
Yeah.
It's just that we have better market conditions, so dilution is being kept at least to I wouldn't say a minimum, but it's being reduced.
Reduced,
right?
yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
Greg, I think we've covered the story ad nausea. We've covered it.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Happy to have you back anytime soon. I'd love to get some updates on Woodjam and what the plans are and how the results are coming out. So I'd love to have you back on. Yeah. And that's it.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Good on you, mate.
Everybody else, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this update from Vizsla Copper. Lots going on. Greg has big plans, as you heard. Let us know what you think about it. Put that in the comments below. Hit that like button as well, and subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back with lots more from New Orleans.